This is a fresh story happening pretty recently. My family and I were driving to college to help me move in, as I'm currently a first-year student. Once we arrived, I found out that I would be living in a Jack and Jill, which means you and another room shared the same bathroom. So, essentially, I'd be living with 3 other guys. I already knew one of them in the other room. We met at orientation and got to know each other. His roommate doesn't matter for this story, though. It's my roommate, Walter, who I'm going to talk about. I got his socials beforehand, and we exchanged information prior to moving in. I tried talking to him on Instagram to get to know him better, but his replies seemed dry. On top of that, his profile seemed like one of those Discord mods that you see on Instagram Reels or TikTok. Once we moved in, I met him, and ironically, he looked like a Discord mod, except he had a skinny build around my height. He looked very pale and had a peach fuzz mustache. I tried talking to him again. His talking style matched his texting style and seemed very introverted. He stuttered a lot and always tried to end the conversation as quickly as possible. I tried to lighten him up by asking what kind of music he listens to, but he said he doesn't, as music wouldn't fill his cup of emptiness. To make things more weird, when he set up his PS5, he immediately started gaming. It's not him gaming that's weird, it's what he does when he games. Walter makes these weird grunting noises, violently shakes his body, and laughs when he spams the controller. He puts his feet in his desk cabinet, occasionally grabbing his feet and pulling them towards his body during his shakes. He also whispers to himself as he plays, whether by himself or with his online friends, and he usually repeats what he whispered twice in a giggly manner. He stays in the room 24/7 and almost never does homework. His movements alone freak me out as I'm trying to sleep, but there's more to the story. Sometime around the first week, I went out with some friends that I met in my dorm building, and I came back pretty late to my dorm. Around 1 a.m. Walter looked asleep in his bed, so I nudged it off as I went to my cabinet, which was right next to my bed. I felt my arm hairs get goosebumps and felt the urge to turn around, so I did. Walter was staring right at me with a slight grin on his face. I yelped and said, "Holy, Walter, why are you looking at me like that?" He laughed it off and said, "Dark time," and turned around to face the wall. This creeped me out, and it happened, I want to say, 3 more times. I tried to move out, but my college said they didn't have any dorms open, so I tried to move into the other room, but one of the other roommates didn't want to leave as well. This meant I was stuck with Walter for the semester, and I just had to deal with it. About 3 months passed by, and I came back from my English class. When I opened the door to my dorm, Walter stood up in a panic, asking me why I was back so early. This was weird, as my English class actually ended late, hence me getting back late. I asked him if he needed the room to himself, and he declined, striking some weird pose that looked like it was from some anime. He said that I shouldn't be worried at all. I visibly cringed at him, and his statement only made me more uncomfortable. I noticed he had a box on his desk, and when I brought it up, he told me that it wasn't important. I shrugged it off. At this time, I noticed that my iPhone charger and my scissors were missing. I asked Walter if he had seen them, and he said he had. He handed me the scissors, and as he was handing me the iPhone charger, the cable knocked his box over to me as well. The box opened, and what I saw made my heart sink. A sticky note with my name on it fell out. Alongside this was what looked to be a see-through case. Inside it were eyelashes, a pair of glasses, a pair of my socks, and a disposable photo of me that I took as a joke. He collected all of it up off the floor as he tried explaining the meaning of it, and I yelled at him to get out. He left immediately. I texted my RA about the situation, and he told me that he was out at the moment, but when he came back tomorrow, I should show him the box as evidence so that they would have a reason to kick Walter out. So, I got the box and hid it within my laundry bin. I felt really rattled, and the sight of my roommate disgusted me. However, in an hour, he came back. I just told him to stay on his side and not to talk to me. After that, no words were spoken. I tried to stay awake out of fear that he might try to find the box, but after a long day, I fell asleep around 2 a.m. When I woke up, I saw Walter was gone, and it felt good seeing him out of the room for once. But then I remembered the box. I went to my laundry bin, and it was gone. I panicked, and not long after, my RA was knocking on the door. I let him in and told him the story. While he did believe me, he said he couldn't do anything without that box, otherwise, he'd just be going off my word alone. Which wasn't much. I felt like I was losing my mind. The RA left, and about 5 hours later, Walter came back. I asked him what he did with the box. He played dumb and said, "What box? I don't know what you're talking about." I pressured him to stop playing dumb, but Walter kept denying it. I couldn't stand to look at him or be in the same room with him anymore. It's now the second semester, and yes, I'm still dorming with Walter, unfortunately. He did let me know that he will never do it again and that if he does, he'll let me know and we'll move out immediately. I took his word, and we're still dorming as of today. However, I stay out of the room as much as I can. He still creeps me out. The worst part is that I can't sleep sometimes nor focus during the day as I keep thinking of what was in the box. Why did he steal my photo? Why did he steal my socks? What were the glasses for? The part that leaves me scared each time is what those eyelashes were doing there, and perhaps weirdest of all was that he labeled the box with my name. This takes place during the first week of school, my freshman year at the University of Iowa. I was just starting to get comfortable with my roommate. He was dedicated to the idea of rushing a fraternity, and rush week was starting the next week. But the parties were starting Thursday of the first week. My roommate didn't want to go alone because it would be harder to meet people that way, so he wanted me to go. I happily agreed to go with him, even though I had no interest in rushing a fraternity. I still had intentions to go to parties. After all, I was attending a party school. My roommate wanted to go to one frat party on Thursday and then parties at different frat houses on Friday and Saturday. On this Thursday night, we were headed to perhaps one of the lowest-ranked frats. I'm pretty sure it was an underground one too, but his logic in attending was to have a backup frat in case the higher ones wouldn't give him a bid. The frat house was really far from campus and in a much more slummy downtown area. We pulled up to a corner house, and if it weren't for the blasting music and cars parked everywhere, we would never have pictured this house as a frat house. It literally looked like they settled with the first house they found. We knocked on the door to immediately be greeted by some short, chubby guy in a white t-shirt holding a Solo cup. His shirt had sweat stains by his armpits and mid-belly area. He told us to come right in. The party itself was in a horribly dimly lit room with probably 50 guys bunched up into the living room. It was hot as hell in there. To make it even worse, I think I saw maybe 2 girls at the entire party, neither of them even close to attractive. I gave the party a good 20 minutes, talking with one overweight foreigner after another, all giving off anti-social vibes. Eventually, I waved for my roommate to get ready to leave, but a huge group of guys by the door made us decide to wait a little longer to avoid the awkwardness of leaving early. I continued to drink the cheap beers they were serving. I think I downed 5 cups before I could even feel a buzz. A heavy guy approached me with a tiny bottle in his hand and handed it to me, smirking and saying, "That'll get you shit-faced." I fake laughed and thanked him, expecting him to go away, but he just watched me as if he were waiting for me to drink it. So I did. It was maybe 2 shots worth of some kind of hard liquor. The guy then started making conversation with me, and every time I hinted that I was trying to get away, he would try to pull me further into this otherwise one-sided conversation. Things started to get really blurry pretty soon. I remember feeling dizzy all of a sudden, and the room seemed to be getting darker. That was the last thing I remember before waking up in a dark room, lying in a bed. I could hear the sound of music muffled behind closed doors, so I knew I was still in the frat house. It was a very dark room, however, I could still make out certain furniture in the room and a small closet door, not much else. But even over the blaring music, I heard the sound of a plastic bag being crunched from the closet as if somebody had stepped on it by mistake. I ran out of that room and down the stairs back to the overcrowded living room. I found my roommate and pushed him out the front door, past the group of guys still standing in a circle right next to it. During the car ride back to campus, I told my roommate I was drugged. He almost called the cops, but I said it would be foolish and pointless. My roommate then asked me an awkward question: was I taken advantage of? I didn't feel any type of pain, and my clothes were all still on, so I assumed not. When I did a time check, I realized I'd only been out for maybe 10 minutes before waking up. Whatever the guy gave me must have been a dud or something. Thank God. That was my college experience of attending an underground ghetto frat party, and it remains my scariest life experience. In the fall of 2012, I decided to go back to college. I was a single mom of 3 boys, but they were all in school now, and me going back was finally possible. The school I went to is a regional campus of a very large university and located in a neighborhood that is known for crime, meth, heroin, and prostitution. But it was only a 20-minute drive from my home, and I didn't really feel unsafe going there. The first day in first class was intimidating. I didn't know anyone, and I was a lot older than most of the students. I was 28 at the time. I sat down in the back of the room at a table, and a few minutes later, a lady who was around my age sat next to me. She was very skinny and smelled like cigarettes, and even had greasy hair and sunken eyes, but she started to talk to me, and she seemed normal enough. She started off the conversation telling me that she chose to sit next to me because I was wearing the prettiest blouse in the room. Kind of strange, but as an awkward person myself, I leave a lot of leeway for people to say or do awkward things before I think too deeply into it. She didn't have a backpack, any books, a pen, or a notebook, nothing. She said her financial aid hadn't come through yet, but she didn't want to fall behind in classes and asked if she could share my book. I agreed, and I even gave her a pen and paper. After the first class, she asked if I would mind going to the library with her so she could scan some of the pages to take home. I agreed, and we started to head to the library. But on the way there, she stopped and looked at her phone and said her son just texted her that she needs to come home to do something. She asked if I'd come with her, but I told her I have another class shortly and can't go. I asked her if she still wanted to go to the library first, and she said no, that she had to go to her son now, but she couldn't go alone. I kept telling her that I couldn't go with her, and then she started crying. At this point, we were in a common area outside. I was heading toward the library while I assumed she was walking to the parking lot. I told her I needed to go to the library, and she's welcome to come talk or whatever she needs, but I have to go. I didn't like being outside away from people with this woman anymore. I was trying to get back to a busier area. She gets really upset and starts screaming, basically says "you" to me. I can't remember how the interaction went exactly because I was frozen in confusion by how quickly she transitioned from friendly, then to crying and scared, and now to screaming in my face a slew of hateful, angry things. I turned around to start walking to the library, and I called my friend so that I would have someone aware if this lady tried anything more than just screaming. I get to the library and I start to watch her through the glass doors. She's standing in the middle of a parking lot, and a car pulls up with a man in it. He was very obviously upset with the woman. They looked like they were arguing, but I couldn't hear them from the inside. Eventually, she gets in the car and leaves with him. The next day, I was dreading class because I didn't know what this woman's attitude would be that day, but she wasn't there. In the end, she never came back. I didn't know her name or, at the time, how to look at a class roster, but looking back, I'm fairly certain she was not enrolled at the school at all and, for whatever reason, was trying to get me to leave with her. I wish I knew her intentions, but at the same time, I'm glad I never had to find out. I'm an 18-year-old female and I've been stalked quite a few times in my life, but thankfully most of the perpetrators were more annoying than scary, though these two individuals never got to bloom into full stalkers due to the fact that I moved out of state. They were easily the creepiest individuals I'd ever met. I'd begun attending community college, and in an effort to make friends, I joined an anime club. Once a month, we'd scrape together enough money for pizza and soda and reserve a room in the library, then spend the day watching everyone's favorites. Everything was great until the second meeting. We watched Princess Mononoke and Kiki's Delivery Service and some other similar movies. Then Orson put in the last movie of the day. It was an animated softcore erotic video. None of us knew what to do. We were all kind of socially awkward. He sat through our movies quietly and politely, so were we supposed to do the same? We spent the hour and 20 minutes red-faced and casting each other horrified looks while Orson watched a disgusting lewd video with wicked attention. Finally, it was over, and then he turned around and asked, "So what did you guys think?" He was looking directly at me, and that was the first time I noticed that I was the only female in the anime club. Trying to be polite, I made a huge mistake. It was, interesting. I meant it to convey that his choice was interesting considering that we'd all brought in Disney movies, but he took it to mean I was fascinated with what he played for us. From that day on, he showed up everywhere I went on campus. The second I entered any sort of common room, there he was with his laptop, trying to show me more of these videos, seating himself way too close to me so we could both lean into his screen and watch it. Each time, I would tell him I didn't really like this show as politely as I could and move to another table, but he would move right back uncomfortably close to me and assure me that I would get into the story if I just watched. One day, he sat next to me and pulled out a notebook, showing me a drawing. It looked like a creepy robot uterus, but hoping I was wrong, I asked what it was, and it was a creepy robot uterus. He was writing a book about an AI sex toy that invades lady parts and turns them into ravening sex fiends willing to do anything for the D. He wanted my opinions on his story, and I told him it wasn't really my kind of story. I tried to move again, but he followed and just kept asking really inappropriate questions in the name of research. Thankfully, at this point, Reggie, the boy who had brought me into the anime club, Noticed that Orson was following me table by table through the lunchroom as my face was always red with embarrassment. He came over. Orson actually fled before he even spoke. It sort of seemed like Orson was afraid of Reggie, and thank God for that. Reggie was awesome and always in the lunchroom. All I had to do was hang out near his anti-Orson force field. Reggie played World of Darkness with his friends, and I had played all through high school. By proximity, I was eventually asked to join the game. I met with the storyteller, Ryder, and gave him my character sheet. He informed me that I could keep whatever stats I had, but I was going to be taking over the role of Jenny, a long-standing NPC. I asked who Jenny was but was only told I'd get a huge kick out of it. So I attended, waiting for him to introduce me to the team. They were playing the game in a CD strip club setting. Everyone looked bored but Ryder and a player named Kane. I didn't know Kane, but he was huge and creepy, with an intense, unblinking stare that was always focused either on Ryder or me. I started to get a bad feeling. Then Ryder announces that Jenny the hooker has arrived to service Kane's character. He turns right to me and grins. Kane's staring focus locks onto me. Ryder eventually relents, sulking. I finished that game and showed up for one more, but Ryder insisted on sexualizing my character and Kane just sat there across from me, both games, breathing heavily and glaring. I quit the game, but Kane started following me. He never really spoke to me, just sat across the room from me glaring and snorting with Orson. They were friends, of course they were. I had to abandon the cafeteria entirely because while Orson was creeping, I was pretty sure Kane was dangerous, and he wasn't afraid of Reggie. Also, it really looked like Orson was encouraging him to do something while they stared at me, whispering. I left the state at the end of the semester, but I kept in touch with Reggie. About 7 years later, I married him. When I brought up all the crazy things that happened back when we met, he told me that actually, everyone was afraid of Kane, particularly Ryder. They tried to disband the game because all Kane wanted to do was rent fake hookers, but he made veiled threats that he might do something insane if they stopped playing with him. To this day, I think Ryder was offering me to Kane the same way you offer the crazy guy at the office a Snickers, just in the off chance that if he does do something drastic, he won't do it to you. Thanks for watching the video. Subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications to watch the latest videos.